Our moderator for today, Mrs. Rinku Cherie, strongly believes in the principle that you too can be the change you wish to see. Mrs. Cherie is the former chairperson of FLO Chennai. She's a social entrepreneur and impact investor. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jyoti. And it's always wonderful to be back in FLO and a delight to have Iva amidst us as well. So good afternoon, friends. And yes, it's indeed an honor to be part of this conversation as we explore the transformative journey that you have been immersed in all your life as an advocate yourself and through your foundation. So I'm here actually to delve into the Indian aspect and then pan out into the global perspective of women as well. We believe the Indian narrative of women empowerment has changed recent years, right? And you have worked with the Mandeshi Bank and Seva in Gujarat. So do you think that there were any learnings that you had with women in India that helped or could be transferred to women across the world?
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned the work we did with Seva and Vodafone Foundation in Gujarat. And actually, that formed the basis of our first... When I set up the foundation, there were two things I was very keen on. One was obviously financial independence, but the other was the belief that technology made a difference. Because when I first went into number 10 with my husband, basically the officials in Downing Street said, well, obviously you're going to be giving up your work now that your husband is Prime Minister. And I said, no. I haven't spent 25 years building up my practice, I became a Queen's Counsel then in, in 1995, so 2 years before he became Prime Minister. Why should I give up my job just because my husband's job has changed? It wasn't going to happen. So I ended up being the first spouse of a Prime Minister to actually have a full-time job outside. But I could not have done that had it not been for the technology which enabled me to do things like, sometimes it was very difficult because I might be doing something after court. I'd have to have my hair and makeup done, then I'd stick my wig on top of it, which is a challenge for any hairdresser, I can assure you. And then I'd come back into number 10 Downing Street, and I'd have a meeting with, the First Lady of Tanzania. We'd have tea, and then I'd go back, see my own kids, and then I would do some work, send something off to my clients. Because of the internet, because I had access to my work materials through the internet, my clients didn't need to know that I'd spent an hour having a chat about women's issues in Tanzania. All they wanted to know was that I'd done their job. And, I thought if technology can do that for me, a fortunate woman in, quite a powerful place in the world, then why can't we make sure that the benefits of technology also help women across the world, and particularly women who haven't otherwise had access to the information, to the training that they needed to do their jobs better. So the first time we did that was in Gujarat. And thanks to our cooperation with Seva there, they already had a scheme in Gujarat. As you know, Seva is agricultural workers. But they also had this other part where they actually provided wholesale services for the agricultural workers. So they would sell, in Gujarat, they would sell to the Rudi something. And that was a wholesale. And then in the wholesale department, they would then package up the rice and the chickpeas into smaller amounts, which they would then sell through Rudi Bens, they were called, women in the villages who would go around selling the Seva-produced agricultural products. But the women would have to travel a long way. They'd get to the wholesaler with a list of things they wanted, and then they would discover that they didn't have them in stock. So we devised, using the internet, the women were not very literate, but they were very numerate, a mobile phone app which enabled them to place their orders using the mobile phone, using the numbers, so that when they traveled to pick up their order, they knew they already had it. And for some of them, they actually could get it delivered. And using that, again, we saw an amazing increase in their turnover and their productivity. And some of the women did what we never thought they would do, which is not only would they do it for themselves, but they would go around the village and if you like, instead of coming back and then trying to sell, they go around and say, I'm going to get this rice, I'm going to get that, and sort of pre-order. And so by doing that, they got even more sales. So it was a very successful product. We won prizes at the GSMA, which is the global mobile phone organization for that. And it was very successful. And it was the first iteration of using mobile phone for the poorest levels of women and helping them. And really that led to first another scheme that we did, which was using text messaging to do training women in business skills, to what is now a very sophisticated app called Her Venture, which you download from the internet, which has gamification and skills training in 10-minute bite-sized pieces designed for small women entrepreneurs, and even actually women entrepreneurs with bigger businesses who can just do, I call it a nano MBA. It's a business skills training that you can do in small bites when you're picking your children up from school and waiting for them, or between customers if you're a hairdresser or a service provider of some kind. And with that app, we have now reached 100,000 women, including we have a particular program in Guyana, which is in the Caribbean, South America, where 1 in 15, I think it is now, 1 in 15 women in Guyana now use the Her Venture app to help them train in their business skills. But it started with that first iteration in Gujarat.
Lovely. We look forward to a lot more work with the Cherie Blair Foundation in India henceforth.
I would love to bring Her Venture to India because it actually did start here, and it's a shame at the moment that it isn't here. And we can do it. We do it obviously in English, but we can also we also do it in local languages. So it's in Indonesia in Indonesian. It's in Vietnam in Vietnamese. It's in Kenya in Swahili. So, you know, watch this space. I'm determined that somewhere in India, and why not here, we'll have a Her Venture app.
Super. As they say in India, from your lips to God's ears.
Yeah.
We've spoken about the global reach of the foundation, and media and storytelling are two very important tools that help in changing perceptions, shifting the narrative. So do you think that there's enough that's being done to change the narrative for women empowerment, or do you think more needs to be done? And if so, what?
Well, honestly, you're looking at someone who knows only too well how powerful the media can be. And not always to my benefit, for sure. You know, sometimes when I was in Number 10, where there'd be another terrible picture of me, you know, in my nightie at the front door, or making a funny face. And later on, the photographer would send me a photograph and say, oh, actually, this is a nice picture I took of you that day. But, you know, the photo editor didn't want that picture. He wanted that one where you look peculiar, you know. But you can have this nice picture. Thank you. That's very kind. So women, particularly successful women, I think, can often be very badly treated by the media. But it goes beyond that. Divya mentioned it. When we did our survey about stereotyping about women, because this is all about stereotyping, about women knowing their places, what women should and should not do, we asked about how, because today, you know, newspapers, yeah, quite important, but, you know, what is the real driver of a lot of actual, I'm afraid, hate speech? And that is the internet, isn't it? And so many women told us that because of stereotyping and because of the way certain people used the internet, many of them had suffered discrimination as a result of them. And I think it was like, what was it, 10% had actually had to stop their businesses because people, well, I say people, I mean men actually, were, for example, using the internet to stalk them, because obviously if you're having a business, then they know where you are. or were putting horrible things about them onto the internet. So, you know, the media is very powerful, but it's often used as a weapon against women. In a way, it isn't used against men. I'm not saying that men aren't also sometimes stereotyped. I mean, I remember my husband getting very seriously ribbed when, at one point, the gay, I can't remember what the gay newspaper was called, but a gay newspaper gave him Torso of the Week for a picture of him when we were on holiday. So sometimes men can be stereotyped for their appearance as well, but much more so for women. So media is very important. It's very important that we have more women in that industry. It's very important what you're doing with STEM. Because obviously, if you think that it's like, was it 25%, I think is the figure, or maybe 30, of women in that business, in technology business, that's the number of women in that business. So when you think about the people who are designing the algorithms, when you think about the people who are deciding what content to go on, they are overwhelmingly men. And if we don't have women also saying, how can we use technology to benefit women, then we're not having a level playing field. So I applaud you for what you're doing about encouraging girls to go, because that's the way the future is, isn't it? We can't just ignore the internet. We have to take it over.
Absolutely. You know, we have a room full of women here and a couple of men who are obviously very inspired by the work the foundation has been doing, what you have been doing. So I speak on their behalf when I ask you, how is it that each one of them can contribute? Whether it is in their individual capacities, as mentors, as participants or partners, what can each one of us do?
Well, let me say a number of things. For a start, if you go to our website, www.CherieBlairFoundation.org, you'll see we have various sections. One of them says, how can we help you? Because our mission as a foundation is to reach as many women as possible. We first of all had a program that we wanted to reach 100,000 women. I realized we achieved that, we exceeded that. We're now on 250,000 women. But now I'm determined that we want to reach at least 1 million women by 2030, which you may know is the date of the Sustainable Development Goals, which, surprise, surprise, Goal 5, which is equality for women and girls, and actually Goal 8, which covers entrepreneurship, are not on target to achieve. So maybe we can help you in your business. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, can you help us? Absolutely you can help us. I haven't spoken, I should have spoken more. I think I was told I was supposed to speak more about mentoring. Mentoring is very important. We all know, I know you spoke about the mentoring schemes you have ourselves. We did an experiment in 2010, which was to see whether you could do cross-border mentoring. Could you use the internet to provide support to a woman entrepreneur from someone who isn't in that country, but who is overseas, but who can give them guidance and support and practical help, whilst being, if you like, somewhat distanced from them. So we set up our global mentoring platform, and we've reached now 6,000 women through that platform. The second biggest group of women actually come from India. Our biggest group is from Nigeria, and then South Africa and India, the second biggest group. And we also, by the way, have women mentors who come from India. The women mentors from India do not mentor other women in India, they mentor women in other parts of the world. Kenya, for example, or we try and match so that the time zones don't clash. So it's that kind of relationship. We ask that you give, it's a 12-month relationship over the internet. You're trained in mentoring and listening skills. You receive at the end a certificate because it's a gold accredited European Mentoring Association program. But most of all, the mentors tell us how much they personally get out of working with their mentee. and we have enormous satisfaction rates for that. It's a very successful program. We do not act as a marriage bureau and just say, oh yes, you two match very well and get on with it. We very carefully monitor the relationship. We set targets for you. We match you on the basis of your skills and the needs of the mentee. And the number of friendships that have been achieved as a result of that are quite incredible. Can't remember the names now, but there was an example of a woman in Hyderabad who was matched with one of our PayPal mentors from Dublin. And she was already in the bakery business, but she wanted to set up her own bakery. And thanks to the support of her mentor, in the year she was able not only to set up her own bakery and to exceed her goals, but also to start doing new kinds of baking she hadn't thought of before, like gluten-free, for example, which was one of the ideas. So, it's a great program. So maybe some of you would like to become mentors, or maybe some of you would like to become mentees. Obviously, there's always money. There's no organization that won't say we would love more money. But I think most of all, what I'd really like to say is I think you're doing a fantastic work. I've said this already. And I so believe that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's work together, building on the fantastic work and your knowledge of what works here that you have, and bringing our skills in what we've learned from our work elsewhere to bring expertise in technology, expertise in what works in training, and a platform in order to highlight. Because I'm lucky enough to be able to have a platform. Let's highlight a bit more about what's actually being achieved here in Chennai and Tamil Nadu.
Thank you so much. As you rightly pointed out, having a platform and creating the matching or the mapping of a mentee and a mentor is actually just the starting point. It's the work that goes into it afterwards in terms of tailoring it and, completely making sure that the fit is right, the audits are in place, monitoring, and the relationship, like you said. I think that is what takes the mentor and the mentee forward. And 12 months is an excellent duration to build a relationship for both. So thank you for sharing that. In the interest of time, I can see my chairperson looking at me with her eyes. So I will just take one question from the audience that came to me in order of preference.
Yeah, because we've got traditional afternoon tea, haven't we?
Yes, absolutely.
I rather like afternoon tea.
Yes, absolutely. So this is a question from Shibi Ravi, who is an advocate herself. She says, I would love to know how Mrs. Blair juggles so many roles successfully: lawyer, mother, advocate for women's rights, and of course, the partner of the most important man in Great Britain.
I don't know, I'm a mad woman, that's my answer. It's so, if I really knew the secret of how you manage all those balls in the air, I'd be a very rich woman by now. Somehow or other, I think I'm just very obstinate and absolutely determined that whatever happens, they're not going to hold me down. I think that's very important to have that. Women have resilience, and I think that really makes a difference. To just pick yourself up. But, the other thing I think of is when I sometimes thought, oh my God, how can I manage all this? I think about, my mum and how little resources she had. Me, of course I have a nanny, Do I clean my own floors? No, I don't, because I can afford to pay someone to do that. But my mum and my grandma, they had to do all those things. So, I shouldn't ever feel too sorry for myself that we can manage, because women are powerful, they are resilient, and they are strong. So just remember.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor, Mrs. Blair, and we look forward to chatting with you in the audience.